sitting here now, if we could talk to ourselves even 20, 25 years ago, it would be to make sure that we were kinder to each other. The fact that we had moved into a settlement environment shouldn't have changed the fact that we need to look after each other. So I can remember Te Arikinui saying, and just a small little gathering, wasn't a hui or anything, but just saying we were a better people when we had nothing. We were kinder to each other. We treated each other better.
Tēnā koutou. In today's panel discussion, we will be speaking with grads Paki Rawiri from Ngāti Amaru, Charles Willison from Ngāti Mahuta Kitai, Paula Rawiri from Ngāti Tute Mohuta, and Nicholas Manukau from Ngāti Mahuta. They'll be discussing kaupapa, including leadership, their reflections of mentorship, their reflections on a number of kaumātua and kuia who were important during their learning, and also we'll even hear some funny stories. Mā takitaki mai.
I came to the graduate team. Probably my first connection was with Sir Robert in 1995. I was living in Taupo at the time, and I had met a rangatira down there by the name of Archie Tairo, who spoke about the Māori fisheries settlement and the opportunities for rangatau through scholarships. So I wrote a letter to Sir Robert, just asking him to ask the question, what's Waikato's looking at doing within the Māori fisheries settlement space. And from that got called up to here for a meeting with him. And it basically went from there. At the end of that meeting, he had explained what his visions for the, I suppose, the resurgence of our people's involvement in the activity of fishing and the business of fishing, and I was all part of it. So I left that meeting with a clear plan to apply for a scholarship, and was lucky enough to get that. So and from there came into the tribe. I think I completed my master's here as part of it. Yeah,
because you did research. Your thesis was on
bringing eels and whitebeard into the quota management system, which happened a few years after that. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Charles?
Kia ora. My inroad to working for the tribe was, had a conversation with I can't remember what that hui was. And what came out of that was my attendance to the tribe's, the trust board's consultation with the iwi or in hapu e te papo rotu marae, and had a impromptu interview with Sir Robert, with our team. And in essence, as I was part-time tutoring and part-time student up at Unitec up in West Auckland, and gave notice and came to work for the tribe a couple of weeks later. And surprised HR when I walked in the front arm down at Hopu Hopu back then. And at that stage, I had completed a diploma in research skills Māori up at So to qualify as a grad-ish, not a degree. And then, subsequently chipped away at a degree. Actually, got a bit of a yarn here. When I left high school, and I think I started varsity in Waikato in 1998 in management school, I didn't like them. They didn't like me after a few years. And so I left. I ended up coming back after I got a job here at the Trust Board a few years later. And I think altogether I calculated over something like a 17-year period, I completed my actual Bachelor of Social Science degree. While I was working for the tribe, just to say. I think I qualify as a grad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How about you, Paula?
That's the most information I've ever heard about your academic career, Charles. So I'm very impressed. Yeah, it was super.
30 years
we could
later.
never figure out what tohu he was doing, what year he was in, let alone how far away he was to actually finishing his tohu. So ka pai you, that's awesome. So kia ora. I met this lovely man at Paki at the University of Waikato. We were living in Taupo at the time, and then as he started to have his kōrero with Sir Robert and wanting to look at where he might go in terms of his career, I got the opportunity to go with him. We went to Tasmania. I taught for a little while over there, and while he finished his masters, and then we both came back to Raupatu at different times. Actually, Paki came back first, and then I came back about 6 months later from Australia, and my entry into working for the tribe was as an archival assistant. Which provided a really awesome opportunity to be able to look at all of the records that, in effect, I think was mostly a lot of Sir Robert's papers at the time, but be able to sort through them, categorise them, and they were the first sort of set of archival material. Some of it, I think, was probably part of his own studies as he was engaged in his academic work, as well as a lot of the board work that he was involved in at the time outside of the tribe with MDC, with the Fisheries Commission and so forth. So yeah, my first time with the tribe was working in the archives, and then later on I got a chance to be able to work in the education area, which was really, really awesome. When Paki and I first came back to Raupatu, we stayed at a house just outside of the guardhouse, and I remember Lady Di, she set us up with this whare. We got cheap rent, but the condition was that if anybody came to stay at Raupatu and that they needed to, and there was nobody else on site, that they needed to come and stay with us, and we were to host them. So there's, when I think back, we had a few kaumātua from other iwi who came and stayed with us.
We reconnected with them later on in our careers as well, and the likes of Iwi Nukusin and all of that. Yeah. It's fantastic.
They didn't recall who we were, but they recalled staying at at the whare that we stayed at. So yeah, it started right from day one, really, the expectations around how you look after people.
After finishing at Tipene, my brother Timothy and I were twins. We were considering what to do and what further tertiary study we could undertake. But it was Robert, Uncle Bubs and yourself, Naya, who actually encouraged us while you were at Auckland University to consider studying at the university in Waikato. And so eventually we enrolled in a science degree, and that led us down the path of the mahi that we do now in terms of restoring the Taiao, the river. And that was pretty much a watershed moment in terms of our careers and our contribution to the tribe. And the tribe, together with Wahi Whanui, placed us within the Electricity Corporation of New Zealand to work on environmental and fisheries and eel enhancement projects. And it's there that I really learnt a lot about we understand the tikanga side of the tuna, but also trying to understand that Western science side as well. And so that's when the Alva transfer, the juvenile eel transfer project was established at Lake Karapiro, and it continues into to this very day, and it's run by the tribes now, the Waikato River. But I do recall one of the first pieces of mahi that helped us support the tribe in was tirohoi. The tribe undertakes tirohoi every year where they paddle on wakaama through different parts of the Waikato River, and they finish up at Te Pua Waikato. But the first tirohoi was a number of years ago. Was we used boats, motorboats, and so we started at Hamilton, and we ended up at Port Waikato. But I also heard the story that the day before we started at Hamilton, some of the uncles wanted to start a little bit further up down the river, so they dropped the boat in at Horohoro Domain at Lake Karapiro, thinking they could travel all the way down to Hamilton until they got to a dam, and then they had to come back on land. No cell phones back in those days to make contact with some of the whānau to pick them up on the trailer. So I guess that was the unofficial start of the Te Tirohois, but the official start was the following day at Hamilton. But I remember those times. I remember the old people, Kapol Clark, Uncle Nelson Hete, Sati Toka, Uncle Sati, Nani Iti Rawiri, and also one of the aunties at the port and on the Manukau Harbour, Yaniko Manhinik as well, together with Carmen Kirkwood. They were stalwarts of protecting the taiao before it was fashionable to protect the taiao. They were always there doing the mahi on the Manukau Harbour and on the river.
Yeah. So what are your memories about the river and in those early days when there was research being collected or doing the tirohoi? Have you got any memories?
Well, I can distinctly remember you on a waka, and so there was an argument between you and Paki, I think.
Oh, that might have been trying to beat each other on a waka.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure that was the original tirohoi, isn't it? It was like the great team with the guinea pigs, and we had the whānau from Whanganui River that lent us some Canadian-style canoes.
Yes.
And the purpose of that trip was to just work out the logistics for future tirohoi. So we had 2 wakas, about 12 of us, you and that Ainai's.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, the best part was Te Arikinui joined us for parts of the sections. Yeah. And funniest story, like I was steering, so I got to see everybody in front of me. And Te Arikinui had a stroke, paddle stroke, which had a little bit of a flick at the end, and right behind her was this guy, and every stroke his waters go boom. And for hours, we're waiting for him to say something, but he didn't have the courage to.
Training, bro. Training. You don't do that. Just get on.
Yeah.
I think if I recall, she joined us right at the end. By the time we got to Te Puahan, it was quite a humbling feeling because she came to make sure we were okay and Sabaratne, but she really came to make sure we were sorted by the time we got to the end.
I was fresh on that. And then Paki said, keep an eye out when I got put on the front one part, when we're heading down there, keep an eye out for any kohatu, because it's getting a bit shallow here. Yeah. That's my significant memory of besides breaking the tail light on Tipa's Rev when we went to Whanganui to pick up the waka. And we came back and I reversed it. I think when we got to Mohara, backed it up and was too sharp and smashed the tail light.
Who were the kaumatu that came down with us at the time?
Nan was there.
Yeah.
And Nene Pine.
Yep. And Paul.
And Paul. They were like our road crew.
Yeah.
And Uncle John. I feel like Uncle John was there as well.
And we had the rubber ducky and Boy was on the rubber ducky.
Yes.
And that was,
because it was a first one that that had been done, we were trying to figure out like where the natural stops were, like how long you could paddle for along the stretch of the river, and then where the most logical marae was to stay. And how, what your road crew needed to look like and how many people could be on the water. So it was, and then being guided, as you say, by our Whanganui whānau who are well versed in river activity and learning from what would work logistically to take a large number of people down the river.
And now they say take how many on the river in the tirohoi?
30 to 40 tribal members from across all of our marae.
Yeah. And it is a nice way of reconnecting, back with the awa. Do you remember when the kaumātua were collecting research and they did their own te hoi, but they stopped at places to collect kōrero? Were any of you a part of that mahi? I think Auntie Mamai was a big part of that.
Yeah, I recall that, and with a number of the old people. And I also recall actually the tribe's boat, the Raupatu.
Yeah.
That's actually an old commercial cray boat. The boat that we now know as the Raupatu. It was the pontoon. And I think it was Uncle Bob's that eventually named it. I'm not too sure. And so they had another name. I can't remember its original name.
Yeah.
But the purpose of that boat was purchased for the river research.
Yeah.
And it was a safe boat that we could put the kaumātua on. And at the time, because of Uncle Bob's mahi at the university, he was able to draw on those research analysts to come along and talk with the kaumātua at different places up and down the river, as a precursor, I suppose, for what we now know as the Waikato River settlement.
What about trips to Wellington? Any memories about trips to Wellington with the Trustboard or the tribe?
Well, we had a grad team trip to Wellington because one of the things that Sir Robert always talked to us about was the importance of, you know what you know, but actually go out and seek other knowledge from other people and understand what others are doing, and so that then can be in service of what we might do here. And so one of the memories that I have was of the grad team having a trip. We had a trip organised to go to Wellington, and the idea behind that was we had a number of meetings that were set up with various chief executives across different departments to meet. And we had a chance to be able to both share what we were doing within the context of the tribe, but also to hear what the priorities were of those particular government agencies. So we had 2 or 3 days down in Wellington where we were making up lots of steps up and down Lambton Quay to be able to meet with those chief executives. And I think back now, we were actually pretty young going in and talking with, senior public servants of the day, but they gave us a lot of time. And a lot of direction. And what I can recall is that they were open to having a relationship with the tribe at the time because they were interested in what we were doing and how we were going about doing that. So that was, that was a really awesome experience in terms of a trip to Wellington.
I know that Tainui invested in the Warriors in order to secure a New Zealand-based franchise. That was one of the earliest investments. What about that experience, that whole rugby league huarahi and pathway, and having the Warriors, an interest in the Warriors? Any recollections about those days? I think there were tickets that went out to clubs to go up and take teams up and things like that. Do you remember any of that?
Not really. I feel we weren't that close to those sorts of on the commercial side of things. And my space was certainly wasn't close to that, but I do recall it when it wasn't going good. It was probably the start of when I suppose the New Zealand media's had a bit of an obsession about writing about what was going on in the tribe when things weren't going so well, and so that might have been the beginning of that sort of period. But I remember the clubs going up to watch games and things like that. Yeah.
One of the things that we were expected to do as a group of grads was to be hosts for the corporate box. And literally that was a chance to be, people were invited to come to the corporate box, but our job was to make sure everybody had drinks and get the kai and welcome the manufiri that were there. Didn't see too much of the game at all, but you knew that there were some big shots that were in the corporate box, and that there was a bit of business going on while they were there as the game was going on. So I can remember, you as a grad, we were expected to learn those kinds of ways of looking after manuwhiri that supported the tribe to go forward. But you were expected to do that kind of work to make sure that the business of the tribe was able to continue in a variety of different locations and ways of doing things.
Was there ever a time that you were asked to do something that you just didn't know where to start? You know, where you were learning on the job, building the waka as you were peddling it, so to speak?
Everything. Everything was so new. I feel like you were just being asked to do, everything we were being asked to do just wasn't something we had done before. Standing up to present in front of 500 people, half of A6, building down here, things like that. Not given a choice, just told what you were going to be talking about, and you just had to deal with it. It was a way of Sir Robert doing this. That was his style of developing us and preparing us for things in the future. And so I feel like everything felt new, and, certainly coming from the world of study into the world of work and just being asked to do these big audacious type things and stand up in front of people and present and learn the material and just with his guidance and sayings, like he'd always say things like hard way will always prove to be the right way, so there were never any shortcuts. We'd all have busy work programs and he'd give us books to read.
Yeah.
And he'd want a report on Monday, and I'm thinking about playing football on Saturday. So it was just test after test, and we just got used to it.
Yeah.
And any job, I feel like any job I ever did after working for Sir Robert was easy. And just.
What about exposure to international visitors or manuwhiri and those experiences?
Yeah. We got, because being at Raupatu, we had the opportunity to, the tribe was hosting international guests, and often we would be asked to come in and talk about our different areas of responsibility, to be able to share what we were doing and the things that we were learning, but also trying to make connections with them as a rōpū as well. And I think it was always literally we might get a few minutes notice that there was a group that was coming, and then as Paki said, you just have to figure out, all right, well, how are we going to, pull our story together, our narratives together. And I felt people were always quite interested in the corporate side of things, and because I guess that was sort of like the fancy thing, and that was the new thing that was going on. And I remember creating this sort of byline that, you've heard all about that part of the business, but actually the real business of the tribe was education, and how we invest in our minds, and because that's where we're going to see the greatest growth and development, but which always kind of caused a little bit of a chuckle amongst us, because actually that was the building up the platform was around investing in learning. And because Sir Robert always used to talk to, doing your homework. There is no development without research, no research without development. And whilst we weren't an academic space, we actually were. We were following a number of those sorts of principles in the context of tribal development.
He was a great believer in carrying wealth around between your ears. That's what you carry around between your ears, and also promoting that once you got your education, maybe work for the tribe for a bit, go out and expose yourself to other opportunities in order to see the benefit back to the iwi. How has that influenced the way that you have thought about your contribution and service now that you're, these many years later?
Those opportunities not only arise within the tribe in terms of working with the tribe, but as you say, also rubbing shoulders with the private sector and the government agencies and the likes. And so I'm probably a classic example of that, spending most of my career across different organisations. But coming back to the tribe in, say, 2012, I took over the role of the manager strategy. And part of that role was to actually work with government agencies down in Wellington. And so I already knew the internal mechanics of government and how these different government agencies worked. I knew which buttons to press, I guess, and how to extract value from them in order to help us to deliver on our aspirations. And that type of learning, you can't learn from the outside looking in. You actually have to be part of the system itself to get a true, deeper understanding of how the machinery of government works and what are their priorities. How can we tweak some of their priorities so that they mirror our priorities? And what can we do with them? How can we partner? How can we make them look good in front of their ministers, which means they'll continue to come back and partner with us and work and have that collaborative, collegial working relationships. And so, yeah, we're a tribe, X amount of value, but there's no tribe bigger than the New Zealand government in terms of the resources and the people that they have. And so, yeah, go ki te kaupapa o tō tātou nei iwi, but we also need to use them as a tool, I guess, to help us in what our aspirations are.
Kia ora.
And what Sir Robert would say was, go away and learn your craft, come back and tell us something we don't know. And I think that really resonated with me and even through my career about how I, kind of try and look after rangatahi and help them on their own journeys. So I think, working in the grad team is you really develop the sense of service, just like you would on the marae at the pā. But there was this real sense of obligation and service and learning as much as we could to come back and make a contribution where it made sense. So
I want to move us to honouring those kaumata and kuia who you had access to, who are generous with their knowledge and mātauranga and manaakitanga during your time. And in your words, maybe share some insights so that their mokopuna can hear the impact of their tupuna's influence on some of the ways you think about things and some of the characteristics you reflect on. So, think about a couple of them and, tell a story, give an insight, share a reflection.
Well, I think of Nani Ina, Nahina Turai te uira. And I think about her because she was deeply committed to education and writing in particular. And I can remember we had been asked to look at when the new governance structure was being established, we'd been asked to look at what might be the conduct, I guess a code of conduct that we might ask the members of what was Te Kauhanga Nui to follow at that time. And so we'd written these, myself and Rangi Māori and Mahuta, we'd written these rules and then we'd and had attempted to whakamaori, good English and good te reo Māori. And then Auntie Ina came in and she was our person who was going to be our critique and make sure that everyone was kei te pai. Oh, she just rips everything to shreds. We were devastated. Both our English and our te reo Māori. And I can still remember her just like reading it. We were super excited to show her. And she started reading it and then you could literally hear the tit, tit, tit. It wasn't going to happen. And she just said, I don't know where you two have got all of these kōrero from, but anyway, this is how we're going to do it. And so she patiently took us through and, helped us rewrite those things. I guess what I appreciated about it was just the hard bluntness of getting that feedback, but then her taking the time to work with us to make right the things that we had written, and she was very particular about how things should be done, and so the attention to detail, and so I take that forward now in everything as in my mahi that I do. Pay attention to where you put the macrons, pay attention to proper grammar and so forth, because her lesson for me was this has to be, actually we're working on behalf of Te Ariki Nui, and so therefore while they are the rules for the house at the time, actually they are rules to support her whare, and so they just have to be spot on. So that was it was kind of like a slap, but then it was an awhi to make things right, and that's something that I've just held on to forever since then, since that happened. And what I try to do in my day-to-day mahi is make sure things are correct and done properly.
And you were satisfied with the outcome after all of that feedback, obviously.
Well, in the end, it is for the house to operationalise them, but we knew that they were the best that they could be by the time that they were finished, and that's all that mattered.
I think for me, even though I didn't go near his office, was RTM. Just happy to stay in the middle of that building and not go any closer. And every time he spoke to us, absolutely take it on board. Then the likes of, even some of the old trust board members. Spent a bit of time with Fred Carr and on some of the consultation around with that. Of course, Nani Iti. And again, just having her presence is like very safe zone. And as Paula just alluded to, everything went back to what Paki said, service. We represent. What else? And we got to do the best we can.
Yeah.
People that come to mind, people that are no longer with us, so the likes of, and I made mention earlier, Nganeko Manhina, Ati Nganeko. A lot of the mahi that she did in around the Manukau and on the river set that expectation on all of these corporates who use the river, that you've got to care for the river first and foremost. You got to give a koha back to the river before you actually take anything from the river. And now, those expectations are now bare minimums now. Whenever there's a resource consent that comes up on the river, there's a high bar. And it's people like her that established that for our people. And she was staunch kingitanga person, Te Nganeko, and I recall her always talking about Nani Tui, my grandmother. And she always used to stay at Wāhi, she would stay around her place. And she always used to talk about the old lady. And I help out at the koronahi on the finances and the koha, and every year she would come in with her koha from all of the families of that belong to Ngāti Tiata. And every year she would put down their koha, and she would want the names of her family members in the koha book. Is to recognise their contribution. And so I just wanted to acknowledge her contribution. She's well respected across Tāmaki. And the other person that comes to mind is Kingi Porima as well. Yeah. And I spent a bit of time with Kingi, and quite a humble person, and someone who was full of wisdom. full of wisdom and got along quite well with him. I recall we went over to Canada to did a visit over there. There was a number of the grads together with Kingi and a couple of the kaumātua. And we visited the Indian reservations and stuff. And I remember buying this white Stetson cowboy hat that was in Calgary. I loved that hat. But then one night we were just having a few beers and I gave it to Kingi. Have a wear of it. And anyway, he fell in love with the hat. And then we were on the plane coming back home, and I didn't have the heart to ask for my hat back. And anyway, I looked better on him anyway, because he goes, yeah, I'm going to take this hat back to Murupara and show all the whānau back there. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's a great memory.
Yeah, not much more to add. I mean, I suppose just the emotion that the bros feeling kind of reminds me just how loved we were. I think I felt there was just love, and the early days of the iwi organisation kind of replicated, had kaumātua around, and Sir Robert was, I think that was a real big thing for him to have them around us. Mm. Yeah, so it was like I think he really wanted to make sure that whatever we learnt and whatever we were able to contribute at that time and into the future was grounded in some real kaupapa, grassroots kaupapa, commitment to kingitanga, and whatever you were learning and whatever you were going to do, we needed to be able to explain how that would land in our communities and what difference that might make in the future. And those are hard things. So I can remember in the fisheries space, at least, going back out, and some of the first directors were like Uncle Binga, Koro Binga, Te Whangi Awha, Pita Kere Meta, and not huge experiences, but coastal men, but in the business of commercial fishing, not really experienced, but they didn't, they had to ask me tougher questions, and anything was like, what's the relevance? How do we bring our people back into the business of fishing, and how do we reinvigorate our coastal communities in a way that they used to be in the past? So for me, it was always, they made things real, and you had to think about your mahi in the context of how is it going to make a difference for our communities. Mm.
I mean, you raised the point about feeling loved with the kaumātua and kuia that were around you. Implicit in that was the wairua that they brought to everything that they shared, and the advice and things like that. Do we recognise that enough in today's kind of mentorship and environment? How do we invigorate or ingest that back? Because if you go back to some of the most heartfelt changes that occurred, and how having kuia and kaumātua with their wisdom, with their wairua and their commitment to the kaupapa, there were things that you can't quite express because that was beyond us, but it happened. Like, how do you teach that? Can you teach it? Or do you replicate it by making sure we have our kaumātua and kuia around? Because it's their lived experience, it's their mātauranga, it's their wairua, their generosity and aroha.
Yeah, back then they were the repositories, the experts, and this day and age you've got such talented rangatahi coming through with the reo and mātauranga and all of it, but I wonder whether we've done a good job as an iwi organisation and as a generation to protect our kaumātua and provide those spaces for them in our modern, post-settlement entities, because they were, it was strange to not have them around. I think they were always there, but now they're there because they might have a job to do around. Just the engagement and me, whakatau, whatever. My view is they were valued more by the organisation pre the settlement and in the earlier days.
I think we're lucky and very fortunate in the sense that pre-settlement, that was their life, the world we lived in, going without. And so when we came along, that they shared their lives and how they grew up with. And then post-settlement, there are very few of them left now, of the older ones, that in our kaumātua now have come through settlement and they have formal jobs almost too well. So it's a different type of elder guiding us now, in my opinion. I'll go so far as say there's a few rogue ones out there. My family, I'll talk about my family. Would I say their focus is a bit more narrowed as opposed for the collective as we were guided by? Everything was for everyone. Wherever you were from, this is good for all of us. So it'll be interesting in terms of, so there is a gap there of the, should I say, the quality of our kaumātua nowadays, or is it also because I knew them 30 years ago and what they got up to 30 years ago, and now they're being kaumātua and being responsible? Yeah, but I think, yeah.
They acted as sounding boards for us, and like it wasn't all rosy, but you know there would be disagreements sometimes or debate and about different things, and that was okay because actually it was all the offering of a different perspective into the space was, I think, really valued, but it was all in search of being, again, nothing but the best for the people. So what do we think that looks like, and just a continuous push to be, not to be the best, but to do the best that we could possibly do. And so the debate and how we got there wasn't a loud, argument. It was just an offering of perspectives around different kaupapa that I think was valued and valuable. But certainly the people, they were engaged in the issues, like they weren't just turning up to undertake the tikanga, but they, and the protocols, which is sometimes, my impression is sometimes that's how, expectations, they were actually engaged in what the matters of the day were that were being discussed and how we collectively work through those.
They'd be encouraged. I don't know if anyone even encouraged them. They just did. They'd ask questions of officials and, just because they're in the room and provided some real context and depth to the thinking, and it really stumped a lot of the, especially from the public sector, some people. So there doesn't seem to be that space and that freedom for our kaumātua to be free to fully participate and engage.
I want you to think of where we are now, 30 years since the signing of the settlement. A lot has happened. And if you were to just kind of scan that period of time and say what our greatest lessons are, what would you point to as a big lesson for us as an iwi?
So much has happened, It should be obvious, but we've got different, such a long period. But I think sitting here now, if we could talk to ourselves even 20, 25 years ago, it would be to make sure that we were kinder to each other. The fact that we had moved into a settlement environment shouldn't have changed the fact that we need to look after each other. So I can remember Te Arikinui saying, and just a small little gathering, wasn't a hui or anything, but just saying we were a better people when we had nothing. We were kinder to each other, we treated each other better. And I think that manifests itself in a number of ways. Like, I'm sure if you were to talk to the Koronehana Committee, this guy, he's on it, the amount of marae and whānau that would koha kai has dropped dramatically because the tribe's there, or the tribe can take care of it. The settlement can take care of all it. So there's all these, real important old school obligations that whole communities and maraes had to kingitanga kaupapa that now is kind of, the tribe the settlement's got heaps of money, they can take care of it. So I think, it's in a way I look at how we've changed as a people, and some of it's not for the better, and it comes down to how we treat each other and look after each other. And there are some, well publicised things that went down during our time in the tribe, which culminated in Te Arakinui being taken to court. So, we don't need to go into the details about that, but if there is a lesson, surely it's that, isn't it? That can never happen again. Whatever rationale you came up with to think that was a good idea, that has to be a lesson going forward, that can never happen again.
And the reason why it has to be a lesson, surely, is so that we can heal through what was a hurtful period, but also to understand that there is nothing more important than our collective benefit. Yeah. It's not about individuals. That whole period, I think, got everyone thinking in a very insular way about individuals and where they sat at a particular time. But I think if we were to share the story with our mokopuna so that they remember a period of time where we don't want to go back to, it seems to me that we will have to find a way to talk about the difficult years and what it taught us, so that we are better for it, not worse for it. We are kinder.
Well, the narrative needs to shift back to the collective good, because if you were to ask a number of people, either looking from inside or even looking at us from outside, to explain the last 30 years, they would be talking about individuals who did something and led something for a period. And it's, rather than us, all of us, and how the settlement has contributed to all of us. So I think for mine, we went from being a collective to the narrative shifting to individuals in the leadership spaces. And that's a shame. But it's not by design, maybe. It's just the way it's progressed. So I think I look back and think that is a shame.
It is a shame. But am I right to characterise those kaumātua and kuia that sat around you all, us all, in that period of time, they could see beyond themselves?
Yeah.
In fact, they were a part of the moving the dial to the next destination, but they never ever focused on themselves. That was something very strong, eh?
One of the key themes that I heard from kaumātua over the years is I always remember how they will speak of fondness about their youth, and how they will speak about being in a happy place, even though they were pohara, even though they were poor. They always talk about, we didn't have much, we didn't have much of this, we didn't have much money, but we were happy as kids because we got the kai out of the river. We planted the mara. And so although they grew up in that Raupatu era, the real Raupatu era where we lost land, they always had a smile on their face. They always spoke fondly of their youth. And I guess that made an impression on them in terms of the settlement is for the future generation, because they survived the hardship. They did the mahi. They did the sacrifices, not us. We were there to build upon their legacy. Who are we to complain in what we have now compared to their youth? And that was a common theme across many of the kaumātua that I had the pleasure of being around.
I think strength being in the collective is, if you think about the settlement was built on marae, and the mana rests with the marae, and that's such a powerful opportunity to, and you can see it, marae mobilising themselves, but also mobilising together across different parts of the tribal lands. And I think that's super exciting for what paves the way for the future, and always to hold on to that collective strength and do what you can in service of that collective strength. And it seems so simple in the way that not just the settlement was structured, the things that were important as part of the settlement, the building of this endowed college, the potential to build one in Auckland. So very firmly setting within the settlement the expectation of continued investment in what was between our ears and in our brain power at the same time as the new governance structure being built on the mana of marae across the tribal land. So I think these touchstones that have been created over the 30 years that we can look back to help guide to the future. But I think not being from here, my observation is that everything that Waikato does is in service of others. And it won't, and you will never say it, and it doesn't need to be said. But where as an iwi, you'll be the ones to step out in front, be the ones to say the things that everybody else is thinking, and that's a quiet leadership that I think a number of other iwi do enjoy, because you do the heavy lifting often, and the settlement is an example of that. The river settlement is another example of that, and just continue to push on what are the right things to be being done at that time. So the kingitanga links and in service of other iwi and actually in other Indigenous peoples across the world is something that I think you can see that there are solid core principles in the way that things have always been done that are in service of others.
I think we're very lucky in an unintentional, perhaps, outcome of the settlement. And it was noticeable within a few years, like 4 or 5 years after the 95 settlement, was it created another area of dependency almost. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where people relied on winds, and then they, as Paki alluded to, then suddenly said, we'll get the tribe to do it, then I don't personally have to fork out or things like that. I remember going up to a hui up at Varsity, might have been one of the West Coast harbours claims up there, and this was just a grouping of our marae from out on the West Coast, and Malena, she raised that point that just calling marae hui and that now, or even for wānanga, was like, let's get funding from the tribe to do it. And the old way of doing things of just collectively get in there and nut into it, that had already started to disappear. So by doing that and getting help for the tribe, you would have additional resourcing. But that was a scary realisation that we created another dependency for some. Yeah. And as the old people have passed away, that us doing it ourselves, that's kind of dried off exactly what Paki said about the marae come coronation. It's like that for our Paukai marae, that families used to be responsible for this, and this, and suddenly it's just, we'll just get the tribe to buy some fish for us or something. So unintentional consequence of it.
So these are the things that we have to be mindful of, not replicating, creating a dependency kind of mentality, not learning from the lessons of the past. And what we need to be is kinder to each other, remember collectivism, understand the importance of doing things beyond ourselves. Those are all, important things. If you had the chance to talk to your moko tuarua in 30 years' time and seed out a vision, a manamutake mokopuna vision for them, which is as much a challenge for us individually as it is collectively as it is for the tribe, what would that look like?
My hope for my mokopuna and their kids would be that the tribal organisation doesn't exist. or it certainly isn't this piece that continues to grow bigger at the expense of investing in our communities. And one of the things Robert used to say was change won't happen until our people are leading the change for themselves and their communities. And that's always resonated, and I get it. Like, the tribal organisation is so busy. There's great people and they're doing the best they can for our people. But where does that take us, this building this bigger central beast, other than replicating what exists in Wellington? So my hope is that the tribal organisation doesn't exist, or at the very least it's well down the path of winding itself down, because it's created these models that invest in the ground in our community. You look at the opportunity that housing development creates. We've got tribal members, good example is William Tapara. He runs Taonga Development Limited. He's good enough to build 50 transportable homes as part of the Gabriel Relief Fund for the government. All right? But he's not good enough to build 10 houses on our whenua for our people. He employs our people, and I get it. So this isn't a dig at the operational staff, because they're trying to de-risk the development by saying we've got to go tier one developers, whoever they are, and so you get what they're doing. This isn't a dig at them, but our leaders need to put a stake in the ground and say, we're happy to assume additional costs to make sure that our people get the work, and we've got the wraparound service mentorship to make sure they're going to be successful, because they already are. We just don't seem to have the courage to believe in ourselves enough to just say, don't care what the other options are, we're going to back ourselves to build our own whares for our own people by the hands of our own people. So, unfortunately, and with this last government coming in, lots of that sort of housing development opportunities has ceased there in the Kainga Water type space, that kind of thing. So, I just see real current missed opportunities of our organisation not taking that step to actually create those. And from what I see them, they're like the new grad team going forward, those beacons of possibility in our communities that can do these amazing things. And we just, because they're going to employ our people. These tier one organisations will promise to you. There's no guarantee. There's no one checking that they do. It's our people driving in the gate to build our houses. So yeah, for me, it's the tribal organisation, post-settlement entity, not existing or getting a lot smaller than it currently is, because we've invested on the ground in our hapori.
Kia ora.
Yeah, likewise. For me, I haven't got into the detail like Paki, but at a higher level, for example, it's like going to Marae Hui, as an example, and seeing the whānau working at the pā, doing dishes, whatever, but they're on their company vehicles, like that, whether it be they're part stake in a surveying company or a catering company, or they've got the lawn mowing contract for such and such. You see at least more than half the vehicles parked up are company-owned cars going forward.
So that we have an enterprise ecosystem that we are growing and feeding.
Absolutely. From building to plumbing, from the architects, from the resource consenting, from the permits. I don't realise not many of our whānau build new houses personally, but a space 20, even another 10 years down the track, that our whānau are working hard in their own businesses. The question is, how do we also keep them hooked in to serving the iwi, as our old people have done, to go to the pā when the hui are on, and you might be the CEO or director, but you're actually on setting up the paipai. You're not even on the paipai. So, yeah, down the track, any opportunity to world is available to our tamariki and our mokopuna. It's not even a thought that they can't do it. And then when they look around and they see aunties, uncles, cousins, in their own businesses working collectively and in competition. No, that's my vision for the tribe. But a decentralisation, as Paki said, in terms of from the tribal current situation, which is not cool because I work for the tribe. Shooting myself.
You'll be seconded back home to Kahoua.
To practice what you're preaching.
Or to add to that, I would say staying connected to what it is to be Waikato. And even within Waikato, you know, there's the way the Puaha operates, and I'm sure it's very different to the way the West Coasters operate, to marae that are around the awa. So, you know, those are all real special idiosyncrasies that I think I would hope aren't lost. That those are the things that actually are thriving, and so it is the identity and the language that goes with that. I can see that will live through the marae as being the hubs of innovation. They are where whānau can physically connect into those spaces, and so they will, you know, become these hubs of innovation, these hubs that collect the stories and the kōrero, but they are the places where people can go to. I feel without that, there's the potential to go to other repositories that are default, like libraries and whare taonga and so forth, but actually the most precious whare taonga are the marae and the people that make up that. So 30 years' time, that's what I'd be encouraging my mokopuna and their children, is stay connected to the marae, because that's where you're going to be replenished, but also you will be a replenisher as well.
In terms of what I would want for my mokopuna, first and foremost, from their perspective, I want them to be proud to be Waikato.
Yeah.
Proud to be Māori. And through that, they'll have a more of a positive growth mindset, you know, that strong mindset, rather than a negative or a grievance mode. Yeah, I think that's the real opportunity for our mokopuna, to get them in the right headspace, to be proud of where they come from, know where they come from, be strong in their tikanga and te reo, but also to be proud of it. And Paula touched on that cultural importance, that cultural understanding for our tamariki, knowing where they're from, knowing who their tuupuna were, knowing those stories, like we had that brief kōrero before. Have a kōrero to capture those stories from your grandparents, from your great-grandparents, before they move on, because when they're gone, and those stories and their whakaaro and their aspirations when they were small are gone with them. So it's important that our tamariki, our mokopuna, have a strong sense of who they are, their identity, to carry it on for the next generations. From a tribal perspective, tribe can be an enabler of our marae priorities. If the marae have identified this as a priority, they've done a wānanga and they want to do this, then the tribe should get in behind and support that. I think that's really important. And I speak from initiatives from two of my marae, where we've got a number of priorities, and we've driven those priorities, but also the tribe have come in and given us a helping hand as well, but haven't been the primary drivers of our priorities. That's us. It falls upon us. And so everybody needs a helping hand. Everybody needs a helping hand. Not a handout, but a support when and where required.
In terms of, you know, the leaders that were around during the time that the settlement was being negotiated, we had Sir Graham Latimer, we had Maturata, we had Tā Tipene. We had Archie Taiaroa, we had Sir Robert, we had also Api Mahuika, we had all these great leaders. Koro Jews. So in the iwi domain, there were all these leaders who were a part of this big push going forward and who were helping to change the way that the government was thinking. Did you come into contact or have any experience with tā tipene at all in any of your roles and functions?
Only in the sense, because my area was fisheries, Robert would send me down to Wellington to go to, they called them taumata paipai huis. And after the 89 Act and the 1992 Fisheries Settlement Act, they basically confirmed all the assets, shares in companies, quota and cash that had to be distributed. And then confirmed Te Ohu Kaimana's, the Commissioner's job was to define the methodology for allocation of that. And you had these two big opposing positions. One was all about coastline, and the other was Wahira population. And the two leaders of those two were Sir Robert and tā tipene. So it was, they were very professional, especially when the Te Ohu Kaimana would be facilitating these taumata paipai huis, but they didn't really have a lot to say. You could tell there was a competitive nature there. There always was. But the personalities from around the motu it was unreal to see that in the flesh. I remember the first time we went down, Sir Robert sent me down, and then Monday morning, what did you think? And I was looking forward to going down because it was, in my mind, I knew about taumata paipai. I knew that this was the ultimate forum amongst iwidom to debate the methodology for allocation, and it was just chaos. Like I remember coming back and Sir Robert said, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, it's a joke. Everyone's calling, acting like kids and calling closed caucuses, but really it was just the nature of the challenge, which was to try and basically find a solution that the least amount of people were upset by, because no one was happy completely with any part of that. Hey? And I feel that's the reason why we don't. That's the only all iwi settlement. And I doubt there'll be another all iwi settlement, because it just brought out the best and the worst of us, I think, if we were to look back at that.
Well, let me ask you about the best of that ilk of leadership and what that looked and felt like. What did the best look like?
Just real, that sense of unity, albeit in two parts, but just a real look at the likes of Api and Koro Jews and the leadership they provided in that rōpū and how they lifted smaller iwi to be the face of their messaging and things like that. And so that was really impressive. And same on, I want to say our side, only because we're on that side of the argument, Tainui Waka. But same, it's just you got a sense of, and I haven't seen it a lot where we talk about the collective strength of, how many times have you seen us all iwi come together on certain things, eh? Maybe this last year has been a really good opportunity to see we come together in Māori communities and together. But so for me, it was that real traditional look of just how that leadership, collective leadership and strength looked in the face of strong opposition, and the two of them. So just kind of watching this debate go on for years, and it did go on for years. So I think for me, it was just the excellence of the leadership under pressure to do things like hold the line and not compromise and things like that.
Just on fisheries for Waitatu, one of the, I think, things that I recall Sir Robert saying is that we don't want to be paper fishermen.
Yeah.
Have we succeeded in that area? Have we been able to fish our own quota and grow our capacity?
Yeah, we are now, right? So for a while there, we did become passive and, participants in the fishing industry, which means we let someone else fish our quota, albeit the fishing companies that we collectively own as Māori, and Sealord for deep water fishing and Moana in New Zealand for our inshore stocks and sedentary stocks. But what we did in those decisions, that's safe. right? And but what was missing was this real connection to this taonga resource for our people. And like it just happened, a few years back, there's two young fishermen in Kawhia that were getting hoha with not being able to access our quota and our ace and that kind of thing. So I got involved and had to go to the TGH board 3 times, but we ended up pulling back quota from Moana, New Zealand, an inshore package that the 2 men could fish. And they've gone from 1 vessel, 2 guys, 1 vessel to like 4. And they've trained like multiple rangatai to be master fishermen, skippers, running their own vessels, all of that. And from that small package, which is 50 tonne of snapper and some bycatch species to get them started, they're now taking on catching more for Moana themselves. So, just said what we talked about before, if we just backed ourselves and set them up in a way that they were not going to fail, we're going to see growth. We will see, some magic happen in our small communities. So, yeah, I'm proud of them. They went from taking a small package of our own quota that they whakapapa to and fishing it into some into Hamilton, but also, a lot of it through Moana, where it would have gone anyway. And because of that relationship, Moana's invested in them themselves. But it was so hard to get that decision over the line. So it was my whakaaro before about not really wanting to have be seen to be having a crack at the operators of our tribe, but our tribal leaders to put that stake in the ground for the operation and say, you have to tell me why we're not backing our people, and be okay to take on additional investment and cost to, reduce the margins to invest in our people a bit more. So I'm proud of a little contribution for the little bit of time I was, in the operation of the tribe, then it would be setting that up for those boys and watching them succeed.
Well, judging by the reactions, Makatu Marae appreciates the update. Take that back to the fun at the next Marae meeting.
I think Willie was involved.
Yeah. On our customary side with our tuna and our whitebait, because that's an important part of our identity as well. Have we done enough to, repatriate and grow those fish stocks, those species?
So probably about 8 or 9 years ago, the tribe went through its first tranche of tuna fisheries bylaws on the Waikato River within our Waikato Tainui area. And our Waikato River Kaitiaki collectively came together to identify what can be done to help enhance and improve our tuna fisheries. And so a number of bylaws were established through the wisdom and collective knowledge of our Waikato River Kaitiaki, but also in collaboration with the New Zealand commercial eel fishermen, the association, together with Te Ui Kai Moana. And so collectively we established a set of tuna bylaws that they don't focus on mum, dad and the kids. The primary focus is on the commercial eel sector and ensuring sustainability through setting restrictions upon them, particularly having a smaller upper size limit. So we let all the large tuna go so they can breed and increase their reproductive opportunities into the future. We increased the minimum size limits, and there were a range of other prohibitions that were put in place as well. And I understand that environmental managers are having conversations with MPI to do a bit of a stock assessment on the effectiveness and efficiency of those bylaws and how they've contributed, if anything, to enhancing our tuna fisheries. And so there's an opportunity for, another transfer of bylaws, but also to work with the other Waikato River iwi as well, to have some form of consistency in that joint approach to sustainability across the entire Waikato River catchment. And that's quite exciting. And again, the relationship, I suppose, between Māori and our marae with the commercial eel fishermen haven't always been amicable. And but we have to look at ourselves as well, because we are the majority tuna eel fish quota owners, And so we were on both sides. We were commercial fishermen, we were customer, and we were recreational. So we got to look at ourselves and have developed solutions from both of those three sides. And that's where was landed on those fisheries bylaws.
Well, thank you for that. We're going to have some quick fire questions just to lighten it up before I let you go. Okay, and you're not allowed to think about it, and it's just one word. But if favourite place in Tainui Waka? Go.
Raglan.
Te ao marahi.
Maketu marae.
Yeah, puaha.
Oh, of course. Strong characteristic trait of a Waikato person.
Staunch. Tingitanga.
Kia mau.
Manawaroa.
Ooh, a theme song to represent the settlement.
Oh, you know, as soon as you said that, I had that Rocky going at running up those steps.
Okay.
Probably your father's favourite song about, was it? He said, I did it, or we did it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I can't think of anything of any. Yeah.
Can't tell what a revival rolling on the river.
Okay, one wish for the future that the tribe could enable. And it's only one word, one wish. A wish. I'll go enterprise. I'll say one, Māori, more enterprise. That's my one word.
Yep. Kainga housing.
Love one another.
Jingies. Archives.
History.
Belief.
Yeah.
It's it's the foundation of mana motuhake. So if you don't believe in our people enough, then stop talking about mana motuhake. Believe we are enough.
Belief.
Ourselves.
Belief. Well, mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Thank you very much. You've been generous with reflecting, remembering, telling stories, but also sharing your insights and wisdom. And I know that as we pull together the textured narrative of our experience with your insights, that is going to count for a lot. So just really want to thank you. Mihi ana kia tātou.